newspaper had a profound impact on the history of human civilization. Newspapers were an important means of spreading information in our history. They helped spread current events and kept the populace informed on key issues. Roman public announcements were considered some of the first examples of newspapers in history. Movable type in the 13th century allowed more widespread information. However, it wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that news could be mass produced for everyone. Overall, the newspaper has greatly shaped the society. First known newspapers were made by the Romans in 130 BC. These newspapers, called Acta Diurna, or daily acts, were actually stone tablets that had information about legal proceedings, civil events, deaths, and births. Due to the political climate of the time, most of these tablets were censored and riddled with falsities, although much the same can be said about our current media. Nonetheless, they did allow widespread distribution of information to the city populace. It wasn't until movable type that was made in the 13th century that this kind of information circulation appeared. Johannes Gutenberg is credited with inventing the movable type press in 1450. This invention revolutionized the media and allowed news for the masses after 1,000 years of backward thought. In 1605, Johann Carolus made the world's first newspaper in the Netherlands, Relation aller Firmanen on Geheimworden Historien. The Netherlands, a leading commercial center of the time, published many newspapers for other countries. This is because of the strict rules and regulations regarding media in governments such as France or Spain that didn't quite appreciate the mass media yet. It wouldn't be until the Industrial Revolution that the news would truly be available for everyone. The Industrial Revolution of the 19th century saw the coming of social and economic change, much of which was captured in the new version of the newspaper. Steam power and modern machinery allowed large quantities of newspapers to be made cheaply. These newspapers often cost the reader mere pennies. For this reason, the paper appealed to the lower classes and focused on social concerns and current events of the poor. Additionally, the language was simplified to cater to a broader audience. This, along with the spread of democratic reform that allowed such publications, led to a form of news that we are now familiar with today. Because of the low cost of papers, alternative newspapers appealing to minorities and craftsmen were also made available.
The Industrial Revolution laid down the basic technological groundwork, such as that of printing and distributing. In the 19th century. Although the idea of current events did not change within newspapers, by the 20th century, newspapers shifted to adapt to the ever-so-changing consumer media, basically following in the depths of popular culture. One of the most influential changes of the Industrial Revolution was the rise of the middle class. By 1833, the price of newspapers were a penny each, which ultimately opened up a new mass market of distribution that allowed not only the higher class to purchase the news, but the middle class and lower class to also view the same source of information, in a way, equalizing the spread of information. As it neared the 20th century, newspapers began its radical change toward professional development. Aside from the current events and business-related subjects, the newspaper incorporated mass market advertising, which have all affected us in some way. Through this market, the newspaper started a fast-paced process of exposure, targeting all ages. Advertisement in newspapers increases profitability because of most newspapers, the majority of their income is through their advertisements, which we contribute to every day. However, the newspaper industry was not the only market that was gaining attention. Advertisement, for example, has been affected negatively by the decline of traditional advertisers such as department stores and supermarkets. They were once reliable to buy pages of newspaper advertisement, but because of industry consolidation, they are less likely to do so.
Newspaper has become a daily task for people in the States. Most people start their day with a cup of coffee, a toast, and a newspaper. It has become the culture of one's country to read the newspaper. It is true that reading the news on the internet is much faster and easier rather than buying a newspaper at the newsstand. People don't pay for their news in traditional newspapers. They pay for the paper, which typically costs the company more than it charges for the finished product. However, some people prefer reading it during their coffee breaks or breakfast. This behavior is a habit that is found in most older people. They would prefer reading the newspaper the old ways.
Ever since the 1980s, the newspaper industry has been in decline. The first major blow to newspapers was television. By the 80s, most people had a television in their home that was constantly on. This meant that many people were spending a lot more time on the couch, possibly watching the news, than reading a newspaper. The second blow came with the internet. Now people could read online for free and anytime they want instead of having to wake up in the morning and walk to their driveway or go to a stand. Even the New York Times, the most popular paper stock, had fallen by half in only 4 years. To be successful in the future, newspapers are going to need to focus more on local issues, something that they can do better than television because of the lower production costs. At the same time, they are going to need to expand their coverage worldwide because the newspaper is always the first to report an issue, and only then does the television and bloggers pick up on the story. What we need to avoid are newspapers being so concentrated that there's only one side of a story. This is already happening when smaller newspapers go out of business and a larger one buys them out. Through our actions, we are shaping the future of the industry. There has already been a huge shift towards amateur writing, such as blogs, and this shift is expected to continue. Many large newspapers have already picked up on the blogging trend and have put well-written blogs in the online editions of their paper. We have also shaped the future through websites such as Google News, which compiles articles from newspapers around the world. Through our wishes and actions for a more accessible newspaper, the future of it will be in the domain of the internet. In the future, no longer will we be able to go to a stand and pick up the newspapers to read, but we'll go on our mobile devices such as phones and laptops to get our daily news.
The fact that many things are going on in the present, society has a large impact on the changes in the newspaper. The past witnessed the emergence of newspaper alongside the emergence of democracy. With the rise of democracy, newspaper has appealed to a wider audience, leading to the newspaper that we know today. As the internet emerges, newspaper is evolving into a radical form of media. Truly, society has a great impact on the evolution of newspaper.
The Roman tablets of Actiderma,
The professional development of daily newspapers.
To the evil eyes of the digital age.
Society has a profound impact on the development of newspaper.